And welcome to today's edition of Dr. Carole's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Well, today we have a very timely and very interesting show. I wish we had done this years ago before so many people died from COVID. But it's called Fauci's Folly. And as you may know, Dr. Fauci is supposed to talk. Well, we're doing this on Tuesday, July 28th, 2026. And Dr. Fauci is supposed to be talking to Congress tomorrow. So this is a preview of what you may hear. That is, if Dr. Fauci doesn't claim the fifth and says nothing. But my guest today is Michael Pack. He is the president and CEO of Palladium Pictures, which is an independent film company that he launched in 2023 with his wife, executive producer Gina Capo-Peck. And Palladium produces long-form documentaries, short-form documentary series, and runs a film incubator training the next generation of fair-minded documentarians. So this is a documentary that never seen before. Well, first of all, Michael,
Mm.
let me before we get into that, because I'm really curious. What before you did this film and before you invented Palladium, what were you doing?
Well, I've been making documentaries for a long time, many decades, really. And I had a previous company, Manifold Productions, and we've done over 15 documentaries that have been nationally broadcast on PBS. I think we're maybe best known for Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words, which was a biography of Justice Thomas. But we've done documentaries on George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Admiral Rickover, the war in Iraq, history and culture for many, many years. And then we launched Palladium to sort of expand, to do more long form documentaries, but also to do short digital web-based documentaries like the one we're about to talk about. And as you also mentioned in your intro, we run this incubator program, which is designed to train young sort of right of center, fair-minded filmmakers. And this is the third year we've been running it. It's run by my son Thomas, and we give a grant to filmmakers to do their own film, and we produce it and oversee it. It's a year-long program, and it's designed to bring people who have not just right out of film school, but who've made a few small films, maybe for another company or a think tank, and want to make their own film. And we mentor them over the year and give them money to do the film and talk to them every week and get it into film festivals and distribution. And we're now in our third year. And if any of your listeners and viewers want to see them, they're on the Real Clear website, realclearpolitics.com, or you can find them maybe most easily through our website, palladiumpictures.com, and there's an incubator button. And if anyone out there knows someone who wants to apply, in a few months it'll be open, but you can always just reach out to my son via the website.
Okay, that sounds great. Trying to make more generations of people who have a conscience like you and your wife and your
Yes,
son.
like that. Yes.
Now, have you ever done a documentary that has been as controversial? Well, I mean, actually, when did this documentary come out?
It was
The
released maybe a month ago on
Oh,
the Wall Street Journal website, and I should say it's free on the Wall Street Journal website. It's not behind their paywall, so your viewers and listeners can go watch it. It's only a half hour. Tells the whole story of the lockdowns all in one place, and it can be found at the main WSJ.com website or their YouTube page if you search for Lockdown Dissidents. But the three films we've made with them are all on this one page, wsj.com/opinion docs, where they can all be found through our website, palladiumpictures.com. But these three are free. I think in addition to Lockdown Dissidents, your listeners would want to watch the other two too. The first one is about the Crown Heights riot of 1991, the worst anti-Semitic riot in American history, and
mm,
really a case study in the origins of left-wing anti-Semitism, which we're surrounded
Experiencing
by
right
today.
now in New York with Mom Donnie. Yes, it's very timely.
It
Yes.
is very timely. I mean, I think it's even worse now than it was in 1991, but it was bad then. And we have one on the prime ministership of Liz Truss and her battle with their version of the administrative state or the swamp and her controversies as prime minister. So that's more of an economic show. And now there's this one. And then at the end of August, we're coming out with one about the withdrawal from Afghanistan,
Hmm.
which will be its fifth anniversary, the end of August, fifth anniversary of the disastrous withdrawal and
Yes.
the death of people at the Abbey Gate bombing. And then in the fall, we have one coming out about the trucker convoy, the Canadian trucker convoy
Hmm.
protesting COVID, COVID restrictions in Canada.
Fascinating, fascinating. Okay, well then let's we're going to be showing the trailer, but before that, what made you do this current film, The Lockdown Dissidents?
Well, the series with the Wall Street Journal, all of them are designed to look at issues and events from the recent past that have been undercovered or misreported or memory hold. And in the case of the lockdowns, it's not that they were not reported on. They were the biggest story of the time and perhaps the biggest thing to happen to America and the world in decades, but they were vastly misreported and in a distorted way. And now a few years have gone by and it's time to set the record straight. I should say that my partners, the Wall Street Journal opinion section, not the news section, we're really way ahead of the curve on this. They published some of our lockdown dissidents like Jay Bhattacharya and Scott Atlas already in March of 2020, before anybody else. And
Hmm.
they had numerous editorials on this subject, including actually, today's editorial. So they have been very concerned about this topic. And so when we pick a topic, we jointly agree on it. And this was one that they felt strongly about, as did I, but they particularly did.
Well, did you know that the congressional interview of testimony of Dr. Fauci was going to be coming up tomorrow? Like, did you time it so perfectly, or was
Uh,
that?
I wish I could say that I did, but I didn't.
Okay,
Sometimes, I mean, it's sort of a lucky thing for the film and maybe for the country. So, yeah, it's gotten a whole lot of a new wave of interest,
right.
and rightly so.
Okay, well, why don't we show the trailer?
Great.
Dr. Fauci said, that's the problem. The people are not afraid enough. I said, it's unethical to use fear in an emergency to manipulate people.
We wrote this declaration with the hope of telling the world that the lockdown was the wrong strategy.
Collins saying, Jay Bhattacharya, we got to take him down. What scientists talk like that?
They're killing people.
High government officials, including inside the White House itself, would go to social media companies and threaten them.
Nice social media platform you got there. Shame if something happened to it.
We became more totalitarian.
If you don't have free speech, you cannot have science.
Well, maybe we can play it again later, so that we can see the visual, not just hear the hear
But
it.
you know something, Carol, maybe if you could take a look at it, it's only 30 seconds if we can break for a
Oh,
second.
I mean,
You've
I've
seen it.
seen it.
You've
Yes,
seen the whole
I
film, yeah.
haven't seen the trailer necessarily. I saw the film.
Okay, so that's sufficient. That's more
Okay,
than sufficient. Okay,
okay.
great.
And I should tell you, just in case just so you know where I'm coming from, and so my audience knows where I'm coming from. During COVID, I had a website called pleasefirefauci.com. And I had a petition and I had on it that people could sign. And I had news clips, things that Fauci was doing wrong so that people would,
Mm.
know why we need to fire him. Um, and I had I'm a psychiatrist, as you presumably know, but I not only have an MD, I have a master's in public health.
Mm.
And so I was particularly interested and offended and outraged about what Fauci was doing to this country. And so while during the whole 2 years, I was in the media a lot talking about something that I created called Heal Myself, which I'll describe it later, but just to let you know what it was, or it was an anagram where the first letters of Heal Myself stand for something that you should do every day to stay
Mm.
healthy, to improve your immune system, and to be less vulnerable to COVID. And in public health school, to get a master's in public health, and I actually had a fellowship from the National Institute of Mental Health to do
Mm.
this. Um, and in public health school 101, um, you are taught not to make the public afraid. If you have a big, pandemic or any kind of a large and threatening kind of outbreak of something, the last thing that you should do is to make the public afraid of it. Now, in your film, I love the part where it shows that Fauci was talking about that he wants to encourage fear, that people aren't
Mm.
afraid enough. Now, fear, as obviously you know, and I'm sure some of my listeners know, what viewers, that stress, fear causes stress, and stress causes all kinds of not only psychological things, but physical things.
Mm.
Whatever your physical problems are, stress makes them worse, including your immune system. There's something called psychoneuroimmunology, and what that means is psycho, something psychological, affects your nerve system, neuro, immunology, then affects your immune system. So Fauci was in his constant appearances and all that, making people more afraid and making them therefore more susceptible to COVID.
An excellent point. Yes, so he says Scott Atlas tells that story in the film that in his, when he joined the COVID task force in one of his early meetings with Dr. Fauci said, the problem is the public isn't afraid enough. We have to make them more afraid, presumably so they will then listen to us. And Scott Atlas said what you just said, Carole, that, that is unethical. I
Yeah,
mean, it's unethical in so many ways. Yes, it's bad for your immune system, but you don't want to make people afraid for lots of reasons. I mean, it's not a good thing to be
yeah,
afraid. Mostly
yeah,
people don't choose to be afraid.
yes.
You're supposed to be making people happier and healthier. That's the purpose of public health, fear. And then people make terrible decisions when they're afraid. I mean, not just are they more prone to be sick, but they may make bad decisions about drug addiction, about spousal violence. I mean, all of which increased during COVID. And
Yes.
fear is just another catalyst for that. I mean, fear is bad on so many levels, and it is so obviously bad. It's shocking that Anthony Fauci would say this to Scott Atlas. I mean, this is of a piece with the diaries that are released. He really knew what he was doing. He was actually frank about it, and it was, clear as day.
Now, here's a question that I haven't, I mean, I've been doing research on this to talk about Fauci. Um, and I can't find how did the diaries get exposed?
I have not been able to figure that out either, Carol.
Ah,
In the media coverage I've read, it said that Rand Paul has not revealed that, how he got a hold of it. Now,
ah.
maybe he will eventually. I'm sure he will, but I don't know how he got a hold of it. But I believe them. I mean, if they were not authentic, I think Dr. Fauci and others would have said that long before now. So I think that they are
And
authentic.
that's an amazing. We need to find that out because you would think, well, I mean, even if they sent a subpoena, you would think that Fauci would have burned them before he would have given them to anybody, you know?
Well, there are so many documents that become public that people should well have burned.
Yes, yes.
You can write a little book about that. Uh,
That's true.
um, my very first time in government, this is a sort of a long personal anecdote. I worked in international broadcasting, as I did actually in the first Trump administration, but I also did it in the George H.W. Bush administration. And I had a senior executive service person working for me who was cheating. He was lying on his time reports,
Uh,
and he kept two records, the truth and the
uh,
false one.
uh,
And in those days, there were burn bags where you burned documents that were not supposed to be kept, that were supposed to be destroyed. And so rather than even burning them, he gave them to his secretary to burn. And his secretary hated him, and she made a copy before burning them and provided them to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
That was
So why, if you're going to burn something, do you give that to somebody else to burn? How hard is it to burn? I
yes,
mean, people
yes,
do these crazy things all the time.
that is
So
true.
it's hard to know. Um, but presumably, well, we'll find out. I think it was an interesting story still to come
Yes,
from Rand Paul.
yes, yes. Okay. So now there are a lot of different angles that you could have gone down, a lot of different roads, to tell the story about Fauci and about COVID. What made you pick, and maybe you could give us a little background since we didn't see the trailer, but maybe you could give us a little background about your documentary and then why you chose that route.
Well, all the films that I do with the Wall Street Journal are designed to be sort of narratives, to be stories, to be compelling as drama, in addition to making a point. And we try not to advocate for our point of view, unlike what we are doing today in our discussions. We try to sort of just lay out the story, the chronology, the facts. And that's what we really did with lockdown. So you know this well since you have seen it, but it begins in Wuhan, where the COVID began. Lockdowns began there too. I mean, people may or may not remember that, the COVID emerged in Wuhan, November, December 2019. And because Wuhan is part of communist China, a totalitarian government, the Chinese were able to lock down in a completely severe and vicious manner. People were welded into their rooms, rounded up on the street, shipped off to sort of detention centers. I mean, it's something that you could not do in the West. And then the World Health Organization went to Wuhan and declared it a great success. And it should be a model for the rest of the world. And indeed, it became that. It was something that had never been done before, never in a pandemic where whole cities, let alone countries, locked down. But that vast experiment was attempted, and COVID came here in early 2020. And that is what Fauci and others proposed. At first, it was 15 days to slow the spread, maybe reasonable. But by March, Jay Bhattacharya, one of our lockdown dissidents, had conducted a study in Santa Clara County, replicated around the country, that proved that lockdowns were a mistake already in March. It turns out, as we know now, all know, the COVID disproportionately hurt older people, younger people hardly affected at all. So there was no point in closing the schools, and you should just do what he called focus protection, focus on the older people at risk and let younger people go about their lives. And that a lot of the other things, contact tracing, et cetera, made no sense because it was already widely dispersed in the population by March. There were a lot of asymptomatic people. So, you can't even trace them. There are too many.
Uh-huh.
So none of these things made sense, and it was already clear. Jay says in the film that he sort of thought, well, everybody's going to be so happy to get this news because it means you don't have to lock down. Isn't that wonderful? Well, we don't have to do these draconian measures. And he was shocked to get the opposite response, like his views were suppressed right then in March in an ongoing manner, probably like yours, Carole, during the same time. So we tell that story, and then what happened inside the administration from the inside. We have Robert Redfield, who's CDC director, and Scott Atlas, who joined the COVID task force. And they talk about how these alternate views were quickly suppressed by Fauci, Birx, and others. And then the second part of the film tells the story of how the government censorship was uncovered. First, when Elon Musk bought Twitter and invited journalists, one of them we interviewed, David Zweig, into Twitter to find out what happened. And it was quickly proven that at the government's behest, they had deboosted, shadow banned,
Uh-huh.
banished Jay Bhattacharya and others from the site at the government behest. And the same thing at Facebook and other social media sites. So the government was actively suppressing speech. I mean, a violation of the First Amendment rights of these people.
Of
And it
course,
had all been
they
covered
did,
up.
but of course, at least some of them thought that they were doing this to help people, to save people.
I believe they all thought that, Carol. And I actually believe, Dr. Fauci thought so too. My editor and others don't always agree with me. But look, I think in his mind, Fauci and Birx and the rest felt that Jay's approach, and they said this, the approach. So later in 2020, Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, and Sunetra Gupta from Oxford, Jay then from Stanford, put out the Great Barrington Declaration, which more formally advocated focus protection, and that was rapidly suppressed. Francis Collins, head of the CDC, wrote to Dr. Fauci saying, these are fringe epidemiologists, which they were not, and there needs to be a devastating takedown, not an argument. And that's what happened. They were attacked. But I believe that they felt, and they said that the Great Barrington recommendations would have killed millions of people, they felt. So they felt they were saving millions of people's lives by censoring these people. But the fact is, things like the First Amendment are based on the fact that actually people aren't in possession of the absolute truth. And people who think they're in possession of the absolute truth probably are not.
Right.
We need an open debate. I mean, Jay thought he was in possession of the truth, and so did Dr. Fauci. Let them argue about it. It's not the case that the one who thinks has the truth, who has the power, should suppress the others.
Right.
So yes, I believe that their mode that they, in addition to being, vain and media loving, as these diary entries of Dr. Fauci's revealed, I think he and Birx and others thought they were saving lives.
Okay, I'll disagree with you on that. I think Burks did. It was interesting in your film, where Burks, I don't think I knew that, or I didn't remember that Burks said that Fauci was her mentor.
Yeah, right.
So
She
she
said
kind
that.
of listened to him. Um, uh, I think she had more sense than he did. But the thing that I don't agree with, and I don't, not that I have anything that I can just psychologically analyzing Fauci, I guess. Um, I think he did. I think he did know that his wasn't the best idea, but I think he wanted, same thing with talking about the fear. We need to make them more afraid. The more afraid people were, the more. Not. I'm not saying that he purposely wanted to kill people. I'm just this far from saying that, but. Um, but he certainly knew that the more of if it bleeds, it leads. The more sensational something is, the more attention it's going to get,
Well,
which
that's
means the
true.
more attention he's going to get.
Well, that's true. Well, look, Carol, I defer to you on psychological issues. I think that would be smart. It's hard to know what people's motivations are, but the net effect of what he did certainly led to lots of people's death, and not just their death. I mean, the harms of the COVID lockdowns are enormous. I mean, it was huge. It was the sort of biggest, vast public health experiment ever conducted in the world, and it was a tremendous mistake. I mean, there are the obvious things, the loss of 2 or 3, 1, 2, 3 years of education by young people, and the loss of socialization, and the increased suicide and drug use, and then the loss businesses shutting down that never reopened, and people kind of losing their will, losing their drive, getting used to working from home, losing their kind of
Yes,
work
yes,
ethic, all kinds of some very hard to quantify effects, but vast. And I think they disproportionately hurt poor people who didn't have the resources to overcome these problems. So the problems were vast. The consequences of what Dr. Fauci and Deborah Birx did were enormous. Their motivations, I leave it to you and Rand Paul
all right.
to sort that
Well,
out.
well, I mean, I love some of the things that have been coming out already, and presumably more are going to come out tomorrow. I mean, he is like a narcissist on steroids.
He is.
I
He
mean, he
is.
kept a diary, and you would think that since he's supposed to be a scientist and listen to the science and all that kind of stuff, and he's the head guy making gazillions of dollars, that if he was going to keep a diary, it would be about COVID, you know? But no, it was about all his appearances. Oh, I'm going to be doing this tonight, and I was talked about by this one and that one, and it was all about his meteoric rise in the media. That was what he was keeping track of. Now, there's something wrong with that picture.
Yeah,
And
sure.
if he could be, humiliated, ashamed, made to feel ashamed. I mean, I think he will be tomorrow, but I don't know that he is capable of feeling shame or certainly feeling remorse. Not, I don't think he's capable of that either. Um, but it is going to be interesting. But the thing that really is upsetting is that, as you were saying, the it's not COVID isn't over. I mean,
Mm,
maybe the disease, the virus, the pandemic is over, but we have been so affected. Our country, other countries to the world has been so affected by the primarily the lockdowns. Not just COVID itself, but the lockdowns. Like you were starting to say, the idea that people lost their jobs, lost their businesses, and got into the habit of accepting money from the government.
mm.
Because if you couldn't work, you applied and you got money, and that was nice. But but that got there are things behind this that are much deeper even than Fauci. This whole thing of getting people used to, first of all, listening to the government, following the rules, being locked down, and then getting people dependent upon handouts from the government, like going towards Marxism and communism. I mean, these are having huge effects today.
I completely agree with you. I think it totally ties into this increased popularity of socialism, or as the president calls it, maybe rightly, communism. I mean, that's right. People got used to handouts. They got used to not working. They got used to the trusting the government. And as Scott Atlas says in our film, people surrendered their unalienable rights, which are not supposed to be surrenderable. They're unalienable. They come from God.
Right.
They gave up, they were willing to sacrifice freedom of speech. They didn't protest when Jay and others lost their were attacked by the government, lost their freedom of speech. People gave up their right to assemble. You couldn't protest COVID. You couldn't have outdoor events unless you were protesting BLM somehow. That was
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Now,
Uh,
come on.
mhm.
Clearly,
You know,
there are political issues here.
Clearly there are. And then people, churches and synagogues and mosques shut down on the
Yeah.
behest of the government. Free exercise of religion. People gave up their rights. People followed the government sheepishly, even in a country like America, where we pride ourselves on our individualism. We
Yes.
did that, and we should not do that again. We are not here to be told by the government what to do. And it's not just the government. This is a group of unelected bureaucrats, the
Yes.
so-called experts. So we should not be in the habit of, following their dictates blindly. And we got in that habit. And that you are correct, Harold, that is a very deep problem. And we're seeing that, in Mandami and others.
Yes, yes. And with religion, churches and synagogues and mosques, were told to close because you can't have that many people in one room. And some places did services by Zoom, but of course it isn't the same thing. And that has had such an effect on making
Mm,
people stop going to
indeed.
houses of worship. And that is a big problem, in terms of ethics. And we've lost our way in a lot of
It,
ways because
it,
we've stopped going to our houses of worship.
It's an enormous problem. You get out of these habits, they're hard to get back. I mean, as you may remember, you weren't even allowed to have those services outside. We have in our film one
Yes,
pastor who had a service outside who was arrested for doing that. Arrested. So, and we now know there was no danger in an outdoor service, and everyone could do that. So, but they were not just discouraged from doing it, forbidden from doing it. So, yeah, people got out of that habit, out of the habit of going to church, out of the habit of working, in a way, out of the habit of community and trusting people. I mean, I remember so much, you'd walk down the street, especially if you weren't wearing a mask, and people would cross the street to get away from you. People got used to thinking of their neighbors as the enemy, disease carriers, not fellow human beings.
yes,
And these very subtle, very deep things are hard to change. They're those things plus the easily quantifiable but also negative things, loss of schools, loss of businesses. So yeah, the implications for a long time, for a generation at least, are enormous. But I'm also afraid, Carole, that we will do it all over again, not only in the next medical crisis, but the next crisis period. The government uses a crisis to instill fear and control, and
Yes.
we are committed to resisting that as Americans.
Now, I think we need to separate Trump from this. Trump did, was sort of persuaded or whatever to let Fauci, sort of take the lead. But he didn't do that forever. Like he soon realized that there was something funny with this guy, something not okay, not kosher with this guy, and kind of backed up a bit. But yes, it's really there was something that you said that I wanted to. Oh, well, of course, the loneliness epidemic that we have
Mm,
now,
mm,
which kind of came from COVID lockdowns too, because people got used to being, especially there were so many people alone in their home and that has caused a continuing problem of people losing their socialization skills, kids losing them because they didn't go to school for 2 years, and even grown-ups. So there were so many, and then of course um, people had a lot of time on their hands and they became bedroom terrorists. Do you know what I
mm,
mean by that? They had all the time in the world to watch violent video games.
mm,
And now that we're out of our homes, we have more violence. There have been studies. I was the head of the National Coalition on TV Violence, and there have been studies that show that the more hours of violent media you consume, the more aggressive you become. Not that everyone becomes a serial killer, but you can, have domestic violence. You can have, air rage came after COVID. We didn't have as much air rage as we do now. So there's that too. There's just so many things that are a sequela of that.
absolutely. And of course, the BLM riots were among the worst race riots in American history, and they were during COVID. I mean, partially because people were cooped up and were anxious to get out, but also because I think you're right. They are more prey not only to violence online, but just sort of crazy ideas online.
Yeah.
Where everything is on a feedback loop, and so we had, cities burning during COVID, and people forget that too. I mean, it was not a good time in that way. So yeah, the consequences are enormous. I was going to say about Fauci's testimony. I feel like because of um, the diary makes him look ridiculous, va vain, silly, ridiculous. That will do more damage, I fear, to his reputation than all the actual horrible things he caused. The way the media works, it's worse to be ridiculous than to be evil. So I think maybe that will be worse for poor Dr. Fauci than all his errors.
Okay, but what do you think? I mean, yes, he's a narcissist on steroids. But what do you think is going to happen to him after
I,
this testimony?
I actually believe nothing will happen to him, but I know that Rand Paul is looking for a way to indict him on something, but it's pretty challenging since he's got a pardon from President Biden. And it's hard to charge anybody with this stuff anyway, but I hope that he suffers at least reputational damage, that people do
Yeah,
not think of him as a hero. I live in Chevy Chase, a very liberal blue suburb of Washington, D.C., and all of my neighbors have "Thank you, Dr. Fauci" signs during COVID, and they still think he's a
really,
hero.
really.
Or, or many, many did, certainly my neighbors across the street. And I think that at least if some of these people get to see that he's not the hero they thought, that would be
Yes,
useful.
yes, yes.
So, I mean, I think I hope that comes out of the hearings tomorrow.
Let's not forget about another aspect of Fauci, another damage, more damage that he did, the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, where he was making everyone take, the COVID vaccine, saying everyone should take it. And of course, now we know that there are incredible, incredible side effects, that you see in the news every day. There are people dying who are relatively young and athletes dying, people who you wouldn't have expected to die before. And I'm sure it has to do with, at least in some of the cases, side effects of their having taken the COVID vaccine. Did
Well,
you
we
take the COVID vaccine?
I did take the COVID vaccine, but
Sorry.
my but look, I think the thing that we don't really deal with, we don't the two things that we didn't have time for in a half hour were both COVID origins, which I think is an interesting story,
Yeah.
and the vaccine, which is also an interesting story.
Actually, we do have time. It's an
Well,
hour.
well, we do, but I mean my half hour film.
Oh,
Um,
okay, yeah.
but I feel that, and I think this comes out in the diaries. He knew he was not telling the truth about the vaccine. I mean, I have no problem where they tell the truth and they leave it up to people to decide whether to take it or not. That's what they should have done, and maybe people make different choices.
Right.
But they lied. I mean, that's sort of the problem. I mean, they said if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID, and you can't give anybody COVID. President Biden said, that people who don't take the vaccine are killing people. So that was clearly not true. And apparently Dr. Fauci knew it wasn't true. So this is not what you should do. I mean, I feel the vaccine has some positive and negative aspects, both, and people should be told what they are and make their choice. I mean, that's the way America is supposed to work. People are able to decide those kinds of things. So I think it's very typical of the way Fauci behaved, and I think, I'm sure it'll all come out, in the Rand
Mhm.
Paul testimony.
Well, I didn't take the vaccine, and I wouldn't let my daughter take the vaccine either.
Mhm.
Her job wanted her to take it,
Mm,
and I had her go to a doctor to get
mm,
a letter.
mm.
Um, and there were lots of people who were fired because if they didn't take the
And
vaccine.
that was horrible, a
I mean,
horrible thing. And
police and
especially,
all that.
we have a friend whose son was in the Coast Guard, just entered the Coast Guard, wouldn't take the vaccine, was kicked out of the Coast Guard, and it really knocked he was a young man, is a young man still, and it really knocked his life off track in a bad way. I
Yes.
mean, and then when they were taking people back, somehow he didn't qualify because he wasn't in the Coast Guard long enough or something. So he just became unmoored. I mean, as you'd expect, he had gone for this one direction, he was
Unmoored.
moving
I
forward.
like that. Unmoored. He was in the
Unmoored, yes,
Coast
that's
Guard.
right. Yeah, that's right. So he was
Yeah.
really, that's a good example of somebody whose harm is so hard to quantify. I mean, he's still a nice young man, and he's not committing suicide or taking drugs, but his life is off track or unmoored, we'll say, for the Coast Guard. And that's right. I mean, why did they do that? I mean, it was crazy. It was just a crazy thing to do, and really wrong. I mean, airline pilots, I mean, and on like that. And so what happens is, you lose a whole bunch of talent, especially the pilots are a good example of that. You willfully exclude these people. Not only is it bad for them, but it's bad for the country to lose this level of talent.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean, it was really a tragedy, and it goes on and on. It's, as you said, Carole, it's not over in that sense.
And don't you think, when you were saying, I mean, don't you think Fauci made money from the drug companies? The more vaccines people took, he got kickbacks.
I've heard that said. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be shocked to find that out. I believe that, I mean, based on the diary, that he's more motivated by narcissistic egotism than he is by money, but probably both are motivations. I don't know. I mean, one thing I think that happens with these people is whatever money they make as civil servants, once they get out, they cash in. I don't know what Dr. Fauci's, post government income has been like, but he made a lot of money on his book. So I'm sure he's on boards. I'm sure he's got a speaking tour. I mean, I'm not, and he was, of course, everyone knows, the highest paid civil service servant in
Yes.
government. How he managed that
Higher than
is
the
another great
president,
story.
right? Higher than the
Higher than the
president.
president, higher than the president. Right. I
I mean,
mean,
it all went to his head.
it
Let me tell
certainly
you,
did.
let me tell you a funny story about Fauci. I knew Fauci when, back when. Um, I I don't even remember the year, and if I did remember it, I wouldn't tell you anyway. Um, But I worked for Lifetime Medical Television. Do you remember Lifetime Medical Television? I was
Yes.
a host and I was a producer and I was a writer. And one of my jobs as a producer was to get guests for certain shows depending upon what topic they were talking about. So when shows were talking about topics that related to Fauci, um, infectious disease or respiration or just different kinds of things, when we'd have meetings, production meetings, they would say, the powers that be would say, "Oh, we'll try to get Dr. Fauci." And I would call Dr. Fauci, and I would ask him, "Would you like to be on such and such show? And it's about such and such." And he would always say yes. And the people at Lifetime were like so impressed. Oh, wow, what'd you do to you got him all these times? And of course, now we know it was not because of me. He would have come on to talk about dog food, you know? But so his narcissism, is a long-term disorder.
But I think that is a story that is a good example. I mean, he developed over his 40 years this cozy relationship with the media. And in part, it was by always saying yes. I mean, that's why your bosses liked him. Everybody liked him. He was a great guest. You made him, no inconvenience was too great. He did whatever he could to be on the
Right,
air.
right.
So people loved him. And he was very, he was good on good TV. And so it all worked out well. So by the time COVID came, he had those cushy relationships with the media to fall back on. And they were happy to trumpet his message and to put him on the air as often as possible. And it all worked
Well, but
well
until
except
Trump
for
finally, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it all worked well except for the people of the United States of America. It worked well for Fauci and the
Right,
media.
right. And Trump realized at some point that this guy was just hogging the mic no matter where they were. And I mean,
Yeah.
he did, I just want to make that point because I don't want people blaming Trump for Fauci's foibles. Um, I mean, he
Well,
obviously got the wrong information, and I guess it was from Dr. Birx, who she didn't know better. She didn't. I don't think she had any ulterior motives, in
well, it's
recommending.
hard to say, but
Do you
look,
think she did? I just don't
I,
know about
I,
it.
I think her motives were similar to Anthony Fauci's motives. I don't. I think she liked the media attention as well. People say.
Uh-huh.
I feel like you're right. President Trump realized something was wrong. I think he brought in Scott Atlas, a process that we talk about in our film, in order to correct the coronavirus task force. But I think that he was a little, he never dealt with medical stuff or a pandemic. I think he too, was more kind of, persuaded to listen to Dr. Fauci than he should have been. I think he would never do that here today, ever, even for a second. I think, Fauci was just able to seize power against President Trump, against Alex Azar, who was after all head of the HHS. It's hard to imagine Robert F. Kennedy letting someone, 3 tiers down seize the microphone from him.
Mhm.
Um, no, I mean, President Trump knew that something was wrong. He could have been acted more aggressively to stop it. I think he just didn't feel on strong enough ground.
Yes.
Um, and then he made the decision to leave it up to the states. And then I think governors made some of them horrible decisions. I mean, we talk in our film about the different response from, say, California and Florida, and governors made different choices. Ron DeSantis made good choices, and Gavin Newsom made terrible choices. And now you can see, in retrospect, what the results of these choices have been. We tell in the film, as you know, but the best way to measure that now, the time has gone by, is excess deaths. How many more people died than would have died if there had been no COVID? Well, California had these stringent lockdowns, but as a result of them, they didn't get any benefit in terms of excess deaths. Adjusted for age and other things, they're roughly comparable in California and New York. But California had the horrible effects of school closures and business closings and all these other things that we talked about and got no benefit from all that they did.
Yeah.
So
And
that's now clear as a bell.
he even had, I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I was born and bred in New York. I live in California now. I've been suffering under Newsom. Um, he even had people, he made some kind of law where you were supposed to tell on your neighbor. If you
Mm,
saw your neighbor doing anything that they weren't supposed to do, whether it's not wear a mask or whether it's having their business open, you were supposed to report to him,
mm,
to the government, and you would get some kind of bonus, and the
mm.
person would get, some kind of punishment. I mean, really like communist kinds of things.
Well, James Toronto, our Wall Street Journal reporter, columnist, says in the film, America became more totalitarian. There's just no better way to put it than way he put it. And that's a terrible, scary example that people think that's okay. I mean, it's terrible. I didn't even hear about that one, but those are clearly the next step where we were heading. So it's scary. I mean, I myself, I worked in the first Trump administration. I went to work every day, as did every political appointee I brought in. Not a single career person showed up. This was a U.S. Agency for Global Media, Voice of America, and others, and 4,000 employees. And every once in a while, a dozen or so would show up, but the overwhelming majority chose to stay home.
Huh.
Um, Many at the beach. I had an early Zoom meeting, and one of them said was clearly at the beach. You could hear it. I said, "Well, how come you can't have you don't have your your video on?" And he said, "Well, I can't really get the video on my computer to work." And this is a broadcaster. But it was obvious why. I mean, they just didn't care. But I went in, my political appointees went in. I mean, look, one or two of them got COVID, and they were very young. They were back within a day or two. I mean, it didn't, destroy their lives. So yeah, we would have been reported. The thought police would have, rounded us up and we'd be in jail.
I just want to take a couple of minutes to read my Heal Myself um,
Mm,
uh, anagram, or, that I was telling everybody to listen to instead of Fauci. So it goes with the first letters of Heal Myself. So H is healthy, nutritious food. E is exercise, walks in the sun, or dancing in your living room. A is aromatherapy, candles or flowers around your home. L is laughter, 1 hour a day. That's heal. Then myself, meditation or calming music. Y, your choice of vitamins and supplements. S, sleep, 8 hours a night. Engage with friends and family to support each other. L, limit your daily intake of gloom and doom. And F, follow your passion. And I like
mm.
to think that I helped people, that this is the public health way you're supposed to do these things. And and I mean, I got a good response to it, and I hope that I did save some people's lives. But uh, I don't know that my petition to please fire Fauci went very far because he didn't get fired. But hopefully, he's going to get his comeuppance tomorrow.
I hope so too. Well, that
Now,
sounds like good advice, Carol. I mean, almost commonsensical advice. I
yes.
only I worry if I have a full hour of laughter every day. I have to measure to make sure. But it would be good to hit an hour. Yes.
Well, like I was saying that you could always, I mean, you can just go online, you could read jokes,
Yeah, I could do
look
that.
online for jokes, you could certainly look at videos. Um, why don't you give out again, though, in the time that we have left, the websites, to get to your website and so on.
Our website is palladiumpictures.com, Palladium pictures.com. And we list all of our previous documentaries and how to get to these Wall Street Journal documentaries. But you can get to them more directly at WSJ.com or the Wall Street Journal YouTube page and search for Lockdown Dissidents. The page that has all the documentaries I've done with the Wall Street Journal, and we'll have the new ones, is WSJ.com/opinion docs. It has the 3 documentaries that have been completed so far, and we'll have the others as well.
Okay, it sounds great. Now, is your movie going to be in any way connected to the congressional testimony tomorrow?
Well, I don't know if it's connected, but just should reemphasize that the Wall Street Journal documentaries are all free, not behind their paywall. Well, I will say that the interest in my documentary has been boosted by Rand Paul's hearing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are watching it. I think it provides good background for whatever happens tomorrow. I mean, we all lived through the lockdowns. We all sort of remember, but unless they followed closely as you did, a lot of people forget exactly what happened when and the sort of how events unfolded. So I think it's useful to watch the half-hour film to get that perspective. And I think I hope that people who maybe don't share our view of Dr. Fauci watch it with an open mind now that all this has come out. And I hope some of your listeners persuade friends of theirs that may not agree with them to watch it because it is very fact-based. It's not a bunch of opinions. It's not people yelling at you and telling you what to think.
And what's interesting is that I didn't really know all of that. I mean, this is a story. Your documentary doesn't is not repeating something that people that was in the news or anywhere really. I think it was very well hidden, or
Mm,
so it's interesting to see that all that was going on behind the scenes. So people who think
absolutely.
they know the story of the lockdowns, will be learning something from it. Um,
Absolutely.
okay. Now, I mean, I presume you're doing lots of media interviews about this in regard to,
Yes, I am. I
and have
am.
you been in touch uh, with Rand Paul? Has he seen your documentary?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean,
You need to make sure that
we've
he
been in
has.
touch with them in the past. I should send it. Try to
Absolutely.
find a way to do it. That's a good suggestion, Carol. Um,
Give him some
I,
more ammunition.
I met Rand Paul a few times, so it's a good
Hmm.
idea. I mean, now he's pretty busy, but we'll see about the day after tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but that's right. I should make sure he sees it.
Yes. I mean, I wonder if I wonder how long how many days the Fauci is going to be on the hot seat in Congress. Um,
It's
whether
usually a day. It's usually not more than a day. I think unless they call him back for some other reason or some other committee wants to talk to him.
well, he committed perjury, like we were talking before about Biden's
Mm,
uh, pardon. But I wonder if maybe the fact that he committed perjury when he spoke to Congress in the past, whether that would sort of void the pardon.
I'm really not sure. I had never heard before these pardons were issued about pardoning people for a crime they had yet to commit.
Yes, right,
I
right.
mean, it's so bizarre as an idea. I'm not sure it's been fully challenged in courts.
No, I don't think it
That
has.
I mean, that's not really the tradition. Pardons come from kings pardoning people. They'd never pardon people who hadn't committed a crime. That would be an odd thing for someone like, Queen Elizabeth to think to do, or Henry VIII to say, I'm going to pardon someone for a
Just
crime
in
they're committing
case.
in the future, just in case.
Yes.
That's not the way kings think. I don't know. I'm not sure what the common law is or how it all plays out. That's sort of too much of a fine legal argument for me, but I agree with you that it's all pretty suspicious.
Well, one thing that's interesting is that it's just come out recently. I mean, we all knew this, but the audio tape of Biden
Mm.
talking when he was questioned, to show that he had no that his he was had dementia. You know what I'm talking about? It was just
Yes.
released, and so maybe that'll help in terms of
Yeah,
overriding
maybe
the
so.
pardon. Of
Maybe it
course, I was
will.
talking about Biden having um, encroaching dementia during the presidential campaigns. I mean,
Well,
it was obvious, to me as a psychiatrist. Well, thank you so much, Michael Pack, President and CEO of Palladium Pictures. First of all, for doing the work that you do, and second
mhm.
of all, for coming on the show. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Carol. Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening and watching. Um, and